My grandparents were from Russia, so it's my first time coming back. They were immigrants during the Second World War, so they ended up in Mexico. I'm second generation, born in Mexico, so it's good to be here for the first time and getting to know a little bit. I'm going to talk about city building, beyond the familial borders. How is the profession, how is the practice changing? How can we learn, or what are we learning about the practice today? What is important of understanding the world around us? And I divided, the lecture is divided into attention, selection, and adaptation. And attention being the mental process of selectively concentrating on one aspect of surrounding while ignoring the rest. It is a way of attending or trying to understand our environment. By putting attention, we understand what we're going to work with and what we have around us. And I'm going to start with a small video.
I was bound up in a straitjacket, and the gulliver was strapped to a headrest with like wires.
This is a little bit of Clockwork Orange mixed with today's events. I don't know if you can see it very well from there, but I tried to do a little bit of a mashup of today's events and a really drastic scene of Clockwork Orange, where Alex has his pins on his eyes, and trying to understand what is the world, how is the world today? What is our world? What is the world we're interacting, interfacing, and the place we need to work and understand this environment. And the last thing that Alex says on the video, when he stops the image and says, stop it, I have learned my lesson, I've seen now what I have never seen before. And the question is, what are we seeing? Because if the world is changing in such a dramatic way, how is society changing? And how do we need to change the way we think to do the work we need to do? Going a little bit back, my office, my practice is from Mexico City. I'm an architect based in Mexico City with Mexico City office, but with an international practice. We don't get much bigger than 20 to 25 people, but we tend to collaborate with different experts when we get different projects. We bring in from graphic designers, industrial designers, sociologists, all the people that are necessary to really have the right tools to work with for each condition. So when I started talking about stimuli and something that incites to activity, what incites us to activity? What was I seeing when I started architecture? At a point where I started architecture, I was seeing only tectonics. It was a discussion about if it was concrete, if it was steel, if it was glass. It was an interesting subject, but this was a discussion that we were having almost 15 years ago. Another discussion was, how can we push a client? This is a project that, a residential building, and you're looking from above all the way to the lobby, and these are glass bridges that connect not only apartments and circulations, but also connect people. We were really concerned that when we got a developer to work with us, he didn't care about these commune spaces. He just cared about the square meters that he needed to sell. So we were pushing the client saying, well, I know you want to sell the apartments, but we're interested where the people can meet each other, where the people can actually run into one another and talk a little bit and figure out who your neighbor is. The funny thing is that I remember growing up in my mother's house, that the door of the house was always open. The neighbors could come in, open up the refrigerator, grab some water, have a cup of tea. And that doesn't happen anymore, no? You have a gate and another gate and another lock and another lock. And now if you live in an apartment building, you almost wait in the car or wait outside the building before running into your neighbor because you don't even want to say hello. So that's the type of community that we're having now, and this is something that we need to react and start understanding how we can change that. I was also understanding at this point, this is a project that we did almost 11 years ago, and it was a house for a ballerina dancer. And we were also doing architecture in a point where I didn't care if the construction industry knew how to do the things that we wanted to design. Because coming from Mexico, you don't have these incredible companies that provide the perfect steel or the perfect fabrication process. So we were doing this, and when I decided that I wanted to do this house in steel, we went in Mexico to a place where you have people that work with wrecked cars. So if you crash a car, you take it there and they fix the car. And I remember going to these guys and inviting them over to work on a house. They had never worked on a house. And the result was interesting because we disrupted a little bit of the industry, but we found out that we could get something done faster, cheaper, and in a more interesting way because the people working on the house were interested in the house. I also was interested in not specializing. This is something that is very difficult to understand at a certain point where when you want to open up your office and you want to design anything, everything. You want to design anything that is challenging for you. But if you start doing houses, then you'll only be recognized as the architect that does residential. Or if you do government projects, you'll be the architect that does government projects. So at an early stage, we knew that we didn't want to be pinned down and tagged as architects of a specialty. We wanted not to have a specialty. We wanted to design with liberty, with freedom. And so we work government projects, we work projects for private investors, we work projects for private developers. And we also learned that, or we have also been learning, because I think learning is a never-ending process, that this is a high-rise that we worked for almost 6 years. It was 60% pre-sold. We broke ground. This is people from the government. We were there. We were putting the first stone. And the next day, the project was canceled because a new developer came in. He saw the site. He bought it from our previous client. They kicked us out. And now Norman Foster is getting to do the high-rise in Mexico City. So what you learn is it doesn't matter how long you've been working on a project. You don't know for real if it's going to get built or not. This is another one that's interesting because this is a competition that we did with Bjarke Ingels from BIG, who's a good friend of ours. And I invited him to do this competition, and we won the competition. Things that happen in our country is that this is a museum, and even though the museum had the competition, they were not owners of the site. The site was given by the government because they wanted to have a museum there. But when the government changed political party, the previous government didn't want to give the land away. So we didn't end up building the project, and I had to explain to my Danish friend who doesn't understand how these things could possibly happen, that we didn't have a site to build the winning competition. We still have a good relationship with the people from the museum, but there is still no site. And this is another competition that to me was interesting because I understood that competitions are not only to win projects. Competitions are to have an opinion. They can also build different things. They can build criteria. They can build having something to say. And this is a project that our government in Mexico, they wanted to have a Bicentennial Arch. So it was a competition to do for celebrating the bicentennial, and it was just going to be a monument. And we didn't agree to have a monument in today's times. We said, why not have a building that has a function? No, it has to be a monument so we can commemorate our bicentennial festivities. So we entered the competition and we decided not to present something that the government wanted. We presented something that had to do more with gaining more green space, public area, and in one of the most cost-expensive places in Mexico City, which is Paseo de la Reforma, we decided to do social housing. So nobody would ever think of doing social housing in a place like this. We presented the project as social housing and an extension of public space. And the funny thing is that at the end, it was mediatized. They took away all the text describing that we were not in favor of this. And they just called it a post-nuclear frog. And they thought we were crazy to present something like this. We've also done these residential, this restaurant. This is a refurbishment of an existing house. This is a Japanese restaurant. So we don't care too much about the scale. We care about design. So it doesn't matter how big or how small. It matters if we can work with the client and make him understand that we're also responsible for a little bit of something. He wanted to have this restaurant in some other place. We convinced him of doing it in this house that he owned. So we refurbished the house. We cleaned it up of some of its spaces, but we didn't have enough budget to really work on a great project. We convinced him of doing some CNC cut on really thin gauge metal. It was not very thick, but we managed to get some of the steel workers that I had brought to the previous house. to work on the facade of the project, there were 25 workers. So if we understand that we can use technology, digital design, but we can use local craft to really work out the best result possible, this is a good example of that, where we had about 26 guys going over the whole facade, cleaning it, welding it, painting it, and making it look like a seamless skin. And of course, if we would have been in Switzerland, maybe it would have come in one piece, no? Or we had a company that was careful enough to do it. It's not the condition that we have in Mexico, but we have great labor work. We have great workers that know how to do this type of things, and we can achieve these results in a really modest budget. Interiors of the spaces, again, trying to work with the house and the existing areas that we had. And this takes me to one project that I didn't understand at the beginning, but it took us a while, but I think it's very interesting to come back to it because this is the Chocolate Museum for Nestlé. But Nestlé, in its original program, they didn't ask for a chocolate museum. When we got invited to this project, their whole thing or their whole program idea was we want to bring kids to the chocolate factory so they can get to know the chocolate company. The real thing is that they wanted to brand the company. We've all gone to companies when we were kids to see how they work, and the thing is that at the end you get a bag with all the chocolates and you're supposed to like the company. So I said, this is interesting, but it's not enough. So how can we make you also responsible in a little bit of a way that we can give something back to the community? When we did some research, there was no chocolate museum. And we came back with the idea saying, why don't you do a chocolate museum? If the government hasn't provided a chocolate museum, why can not you as a private company give something in return? And they thought it was a good idea. And we built this project with them. And it's been a very successful project because it's not Willy Wonka, of course. So when the school bus comes with the kids, at least they have something to kind of go inside, and it's they call it a chocolate wrap or whatever they want to call it. But it starts igniting their fantasy in a way that they are brought into the project. But it's open for the public to see as a public museum. Out of that relationship with the client, we repeated working with them. And I've always, when I was studying architecture, I always used to hear that the architects that I admired, they were fighting all the time with their clients. They would work with a client, they would fight, and they would not work again with that client. And I didn't want to have that type of relationship with our clients. So we figured out that if we moved from the design part a little bit to the strategic part, we would have a better conversation with the client. It was not only about the design, it was about the strategies that would make a project better. So this was a second project, a research lab that we did for them. And this project has these arches. This was in 2005. It has these arches because it sits in Querétaro in a historical district where there's a colonial arch aqueduct. And we had to present to the government a reinterpretation of those arches. They said it had to have a coherence to the city center. And we managed to do this, and they liked it, and we built the project. And this is where they had all the scientists preparing the new things that they will present for future of the company. This takes me to selection, the second part. What are we selecting? And what is the selective sampling? Once we have paid attention to something, what do I select? How do I start building the important aspects in my memory or in my mind? We always talk about context. Now I like to talk more about selection. We select our own context. We select the things that are important to us. And I'm not talking about the physical context. I'm talking about all the things that are important for buildings to understand how they should manifest in society. We used to talk about materiality, or we still do. But I talk about digital design or local fabrication or fabrication anywhere. If I don't understand the craft of where I'm going to do a next building, I'm not understanding the full potential of the building. Space, of course, as architects and designers, we always talk about space. But what about flexibility? What about all the transformations that can happen? At least coming from Mexico, some of the best spaces are spaces that at some certain times of the day, it's a road for cars, but on the weekend, that road for cars becomes the best public space in Mexico City. And you see a democratic space with people riding bicycles, skating, running, jogging. It doesn't matter if they're rich, they're poor. It's a space for everybody. So this type of flexibility that now is on the streets has to extend to buildings as well. How do we blur these boundaries where we're used to saying, this is a street, this is a park, this is a neighborhood. So how can that start having flexibility for future cities? And program, when we talk about the program, I like to talk about what adds value. When a client comes with a program, is it the right question? Because as Alejandro Aravena, a good friend of mine, he writes we have a conversation in the book. He says there's nothing worse than answering correctly the wrong question. So if the client comes with a program and we answer it in the right way, but it might have been the wrong question. So we have to question the program. Is it the right program? Is the client understanding the full potential of the building? So I say, what is more stimulating? Being in a place where a lot of chaos is happening, or being in a park? So what stimulates us to take these decisions and to start working in favor of this added value? We build our own environment or our context from what makes sense to us. What makes sense to us today? Do we wait for somebody to come and give us the program and say, okay, well, the building has to comply with this, this, and this? Or do we work with the strategy? Do we design a strategy? We came up with a name for one part of the company that's called ADD, playing with the words attention deficit disorder, because when I was a kid, they used to say that I had attention span. So we created adaptive diagnostic design. And because when we were telling our clients that we wanted to do research to come up with a better program, they would say, research? Research for people in the that work with airplanes, no? Research are for scientists, research are for other people, but not for architects. Architects don't do research, no? I said, well, no, of course we do. So we said, let's do a diagnosis, and let's call it a diagnosis, because if I give you the best diagnosis of the possibilities of what could happen, as I explained here, that the diagnosis is already a design strategy. It's not only an investigation of what happens, of what exists, but rather of all that could happen or what could be. It becomes a responsibility to show the client what can happen, what type of building he can have. This is a good example, Cineteca Nacional. It's our last government project that we did, a very conflictive project because we had 9 months to do 60,000 square meters. Of course, the government period was about to end, so we were on the deadline of a political party, knowing that it was about to end. So this is a project that didn't complete as it was planned, but it opened to the public. So it's our first project that we opened without having total control of the finished project, which is interesting to have as an architect if you want to learn that process. But the first thing that happened when we got this commission was that there was an existing cinema, 4 cinemas, but it sat on a horrible parking lot filled with cars. It was awful space. And even though the client didn't want us to think about the program, we really rethought about the program. We said, what if we pay attention to what the privileged location, the outdated facility, the potential of expanding the program? What if we select and we do social construction and proactive participation? What if we do cultural exchange? What if we do learning? What if we do leisure? And then if we use the selection as the tools and we implement it in the adaptation process, of course, at the end, we were going to have a better project. It doesn't matter if we had 9 months or we had a restrained budget. So these are some of the images of the construction of the rooftop. This is the building, the existing part. And what we wanted to do is create an extension of the building so you would walk into a campus. So instead of having the National Cinema being a place where you are in a lobby and from the lobby you get distributed to the different theaters, we wanted to have an experience of a campus, and especially with the climate condition that you have in Mexico. This is normally the weather that we would have almost all year round. A little bit, sometimes a bit colder, but not as cold. So we said, why don't we strategically plant buildings in different places so they look like university campus buildings? What happens if when people come in, all the cars that were here, we took them out and we put them in the front of the building. So if you come by car, that 70% of people that come to Cineteca, they arrive by public transportation. but we still had to comply with the parking lot. So we put the parking lot at the entrance, so you enter walking through here, or you enter walking through here. So it's a campus-like circulation that you can walk all over and have this experience of the cinemas. Some of the sections, the details of the rooftop, the structure and how it worked with the panels. One of the requirements was to have a rooftop, because normally in the old existing Cineteca, in the 4 months of the day when it rains, people would wait either in a car or someplace, and now they wanted to have this element on top. This is a sequence where you're actually entering through the parking lot. That's approaching the park. The new building that has this structure on top of the existing building. And a little bit of the experience. When we were to design this cover, we said we don't want a solid cover. We want a cover that lets light in, because if we talk about cinema is moving image, no? So the moving image, why not we use also the sun as moving images of the shadows and light passing by? And why don't we keep using this idea of being very extroverted and seeing the sequence of people coming in, and there's always this extroverted feeling of arriving in Cineteca, so everything becomes a public space. We also are lucky enough that our neighbor here is a cemetery, but we have all these great trees on top that look like we sit in the middle of a park. These are some of the construction images as well on the process. Another interesting thing is that we proposed to have an outdoor cinema, because we said if we have a climate like this, imagine the nights that you can have cinema sitting down on the gardens. And when we presented that at the beginning, the client said, no, but if we leave a garden, nobody's going to sit down in the garden. Why don't we do a concrete structure? We said, no, but if we do a concrete structure, then it's going to be defined as a place to sit. And we don't want to define a place to sit. We want to have a place that if there are movies, there are movies. If there's not a movie showing, kids can run, people can play, kids can make out. So we have different experiences in the space. This is the connection of the new building towards the old buildings. The old buildings were refurbished. We refurbished them to their original state. That's the parking lot in the back. Some of the sequences going up. Cineteca had about 60,000 people per month, more or less. Now, and it's still not finished, it receives 105 people per month. So it's one of the most visited Cinetecas in the world. Some of the interior reviews. And we renovated the old cinemas as well. We created the new ones. And this is the images of the new ones. And what I was saying when we presented, this is a space that was designed for 400 people, 600 people. And again, this was this discussion about whether it would work or not. And on the day of the opening, there were 3,000 people. And that's been happening ever since we had this space. And the most interesting thing, and I remember we had Peter Greenaway, which I like his work as a filmmaker a lot. Peter Greenaway went to Mexico, and I remember I was showing him Cineteca, very obsessed about the architecture and things. And when he saw this outside, he says, this is what would make this Cineteca great or interesting, no? Having this public space. The inside, it's another cinema. You can have it anywhere. But if we don't create these spaces that people can occupy, and I don't mean only like this. Look at these images. You have people, it doesn't matter the age, it doesn't matter. You see a guy with a guitar here playing, almost singing to the girl or somebody else reading on this side. All these experiences that happen, these places that we're not, that even as architects, we try to design, but we don't know how people are going to occupy. So occupation, and this is, you'll hear me talking about this. If architecture at some point becomes the hardware because somebody wants you to do, gives you the program which becomes the operating system and you try to house it in something, what about all the applications? Who's designing these additional things? How can we leave spaces like this to happen? And I question this, no? Are we having a positive impact on the community or not? Is it about the building? Is it about the way it connects to cities? The second project is a department store that, interesting enough, As an architect, if you get a department store, it might not be as sexy or as incredible as getting something cultural, no? We would want better to get a museum or to get an embassy or something that is a bit more culturally status, no? But when you get something like this, why is it not a challenge? Why can't we work with a department store and make them understand also their responsibility? Even if they're a department store, they have to have a responsibility. So by working with them, again, doing this thing of attention, selection, and adaptation, the program that they gave us, and it's typical everywhere, no? You have a shopping center, and you have anchor stores, no? The anchor stores are the guys that they compete, and they're the best, they receive the most people, and then you have all the little stores in the middle. So I was wanting our client, this guy, Liverpool, to give us a very interesting program or something to work with. And when I asked him, what do you want out of the store? And they say, I just want to kill the other guy, no? I want to beat him on the competition. So I said, well, that's not, I mean, that's good, but that's not as romantic to start working something in favor of. But anyway, we started working. They already had the structure. So when they called us, they said, can you do a facade? And we said, yes, we can, but we're not fashion designers that we do skirts or clothing for buildings. We like to design space. We like to design experiences and space on the inside of buildings. But we said, okay, we'll start working on the facade only if that's what you want. But in the process, we started questioning what was happening on the top of the building, because this is a project that sits in a suburb inside a suburb inside a suburb, a little bit like Inception, that you keep on going. I was saying a gated community with a gated community with another gated community. And they think that in these places that you don't have public space, people don't even question the government if they're doing public spaces in places like this. So we said, why don't we put something on top? I said, let's put a park or let's put something interesting. And of course, the client loved it. He said, yes, let's do something sustainable. I said, no. I mean, it's not about just putting plants and saying it's sustainable. Let's put a program. Let's put a platform as something that you can have all these applications happen. So we sat down with his team and we worked with the gastronomical part of the company, and we put the gastronomical part on top. So we managed to extend the program, and instead of only doing the facade, that I could talk about the facade for a long time, design-wise, but I'm not interested in that anymore. It's not that it's not important, it is important, but I like to talk about what informed the form, what is the information that really drives the design. So even though we had these stainless steel panels, and it was the first time in Mexico City that we, from a 3D model, sent it to a company in Kansas City in the United States, and they cut all the model and sent us all the pieces so we can ensemble the project there. I think the important thing was what was happening on top. When we were working with all the team on the process, we put the gastronomical areas. Interesting enough, a lot of people started coming into the project. The company understood that they were providing a space that was needed in the community for the families around. It's a very car-driven area where people don't walk too much. It's not that they cannot walk, they could, but the sidewalks are really bad. People take their cars to go 1 block. And when we started doing the project, the office, the hours of the store changed from, instead of closing at 10 o'clock at night, they extended it to 2 a.m. because they couldn't get the people out. So they extended the store hours during the weekends, and now the upper part of the project provides 30% of the income of the store. So again, when we talk about, does design add value? I mean, can we extend this project to something more? Did we do something for all the community around it, all the buildings around it, in a space where the government failed a little bit to provide public space? So are we going beyond the physical design? The next project is the second project for the same company. While we were doing the previous project, in Insurgentes, which is one of the longest avenues in Latin America and one of the most crowded streets in Mexico City, they had a project that was really old. This is a 160-year-old company, but it was a great project because it had 2 plazas. In one of the plazas, suddenly they ate up the plaza and they did a box. They just had more square meters, and it was a real disaster to see that they had eaten up this plaza. So we asked them to invite us to do this box. And we said, okay, we don't mind that if it's a box, but let us work with it. Let us work, because you need to interact with the city again. We were talking about a deep wall system. The client obviously was sending us sketches of all these facades that we know from department stores, and we said, you're not understanding. This is a good opportunity to come back and grab these patterns, but create space. It's not about the skirt anymore. So we grabbed these traditional patterns and we started doing space, inhabitable space on the inside of the facades. It had been a company that normally they would not see, they would not open windows. They were not interested in having windows towards the outside. And we said, well, I think it's important for us to try to connect, to see and to be seen, because it's important to understand what is happening, and especially in an avenue as congested as this one. We started working all these programmatic areas, because at the beginning the client said, oh, perfect, now I can put displays there. And I said, no, it's not about the displays. It's about having an experience. And what happens if you as a company, instead of having mannequins, you can have a cooking class, and you can have a gym class, and you can have all these other experiences happening on the facade of a building that you would not normally have. And this is images of the build project. Talking about the craft. Even though we had money on this project to have a CNC laser cutting machine, the metal, these guys who were some of the workers that we love working with, when I came to their shop, I said, are you using the CNC machine? They said, that's my CNC guy. And there was a guy cutting by hand all the pieces, and he was incredibly precise. So we had a human CNC cutting everything to create these big hexagons. These are made in fiberglass. And this is the mock-up. Normally in Mexico, it's very rare in a country like ours that we do a physical mock-up. The clients don't know why they should do a mock-up, no? Until they finally understand that it's to test the materials, it's to test everything before you build it. And even though they spend a little bit of money on having a real size part of the building, at the end it will pay off better. And it took them time to understand. I remember that when we were talking about the space, until they got there, they looked at the space and they say, now I understand what we were talking about. So they started opening up the windows. Even the construction of the building was interesting, because you had all the workers walking up on the facade, coming up and down. So it was really an interesting experience of extroverted elements happening. Then you were seeing the architectural students appearing there. And the interesting thing that I'm saying, or that I was questioning, is that, again, what happens if in these areas we have other people designing the applications? What happens if it's open source? What happens if design, part of it is designed with strategies, part of it is designed with the physical building, but part of it, the design continues. And there's the afterlife of buildings that are not defined by the program or the city or the architect. It keeps on evolving, it's flexible. It has its own organic way of being. So we're in a point now which is interesting, because of course all the ideas that we gave to this company, they're not totally defined. There's a guy who wants to put a radio station. There's another entrepreneur that wants to have a co-working space, and he's asking the company if they would rent a space for people to work on the facade of the building. So the department store is suddenly getting all these new ideas for businesses that they were not used to doing. So this is what I talk about flexibility. And this is the last architectural project that has to do a little bit with the same idea, and this is a grocery store. We were asked to do a grocery store. We said yes, but by this point, because of the way we were working with clients, they were interested in saying, what are you going to do for us? I said, well, what do you mean? I said, no, we like the idea of the building, but how can you make the company better? I said, well, we need to work on it, but we're interested now that clients are getting the idea that they have to give something in return. And if they don't give something in return, we're not interested in working with them, because we have to start sharing responsibilities of the things we do. So even if they're interested in just having a grocery store where they can sell products, our interest was in having a harvesting field on the rooftop, having area for different things to happen, starting to create some elements. This is the build. well, the construction process of the building. Of course, again, we're interested in design. We love design, but we're also interested in the design negotiations and strategies. We love solving the idea if it's glass fiber concrete or if it's canvas, the fabrication process that we're also limited to a certain amount of time and we need to understand how to fabricate it fast. That is good. But I think architecture is not enough anymore. It has to go beyond. What happens after the architecture? Or what happens parallel to the architecture, better said. So you have the building, which really reflects people coming up to the harvesting areas where you have cultural programs, you have social interaction. There's a parking lot on the rooftop where you can take away the cars and it could be a skating rink for teenagers during the nighttime. But this is the most important thing that was happening. The harvesting that would happen on top. These are some of the neighbors that, again, they have cars, but they have to take their cars to go around, which is just 200 meters in front of the road. But it's a car-driven place where these are the interesting things that they're getting as a society now. And it's a space provided by a private client. So we have to make them understand, again, about responsibilities. And these things that happen in Mexico, this is an aerial view of an informal market. If in Mexico you leave 1 square meter of space and you turn around, it will be occupied the moment you turn back. Somebody will have a bucket, a marketplace, they will be selling quesadillas. I mean, but that's the beauty of Mexico. We have to learn from this informality process that people learn to adapt. They adapt much better than everything we try to regulate. So the most important negotiation for me in this project was not convincing the client about doing some sexy design. It was about opening the doors to being the first company that can negotiate with the informal markets in Mexico. So if they would start negotiating and having informal markets happening on the rooftop of their building maybe once a month, that could be the start of something interesting, where they can have informal markets come up there and then keep some of the producers and then have them producing stuff on the inside of the store and be more intelligent about their market. So if architecture is the hardware, again, who is designing the software? What type of companies are going to be designing the software that we need for the afterlife of buildings? How much of a building do we design? Is the program that is given to us the real program? Should we question it, or should we keep quiet and just do the checklist for the client? Thinking beyond the program, or picking up where governments and city planning is failing? And not only where city planning is failing, we have to pick up where we have better imagination, where we have better ideas for better communities. Because the government might not even have a clue on what is happening. But sometimes somebody comes along and has a really clever idea of how to walk a city, or how to cross an avenue, or how to interact in an open space. And that has to be taken into consideration. Now I'm just going to close with two examples of something else that we did besides architecture. And during the time of crisis, I remember that we were really frustrated because we were not getting clients. We didn't know what was going to happen. But we quickly understood that the worst crisis was not the economical crisis. It was a mental crisis. The day we stop thinking, the day we stop imagining, the day we stop thinking that things could be better, that's the day that we should think what's going wrong, what is wrong with us. So in the worst economical period, we created a company called Agent, a strategic intelligence embassy. And it's a product design company that I started with Alberto Villarreal, who now I'm happy to say that was stolen from Mexico, kidnapped by Google. And a headhunter came and grabbed him away. Now he's one of the top designers in Google. But we got to work together for almost 5 years. And the first project, we were seeing all these new implementations. For instance, somebody had done, for war purposes, a tire that was an airless tire. So it's a tire that it's bulletproof, and it doesn't have air, of course. So we saw if they can do this in a tire, why couldn't we build a soccer ball that didn't have air? So we designed the first soccer ball, an airless soccer ball, that if it didn't have air and it was made with all these polymers and elastomers and it could bounce exactly the same as a soccer ball, how could we improve something as common, as typical as soccer? No? we did the citrus ball. We did everything. We launched it guerrilla style, which is something, or virally, to the viral market. And the interesting thing is that any idea you have today, you just have to press enter, and it's uploaded into the internet. And immediately you can become the world's largest idiot, or you can become somebody that starts a conversation, or you can become somebody that has something to say. Out of all the noise that is now on the internet, some ideas spike out and start making things or small changes. When we did the soccer ball, this was the previous World Cup. This was the South African World Cup. And we didn't say who the company was. And when sometimes something happened during the games, they said if this ball would exist, it would make the game better. But because it had a radio frequency chip on the inside, that if it went out of bounds, it would light up. Because we thought it was really stupid to have a referee running after the ball. Why should he run after the ball? Why can't we have an intelligent ball that notices if the ball goes out of bounds or inside a soccer ball, and maybe inside the goal, and maybe leave the referee to have more important decisions to make, not running after the players. The dots that you see on the ball, they're scanners, and the whole idea is that they scan the image, they send it to the middle, to the core, to process in a stabilizing element, and you can have real life footage in a couple of years. So you can have a camera detecting every single movement. By the time it was going on international TV during the World Cup, we said we were a Mexican company after we had won some awards. And after that, of course, most of the people said, yeah, Mexicans love soccer. But we didn't want to say we were from Mexico because we didn't want them to be prejudiced about showing something that had technology, and they would just say, no, this cannot happen in countries like yours. So this was a soccer ball that we started negotiations with Nike, but at the end, nothing happened because FIFA didn't accept technology in the game. We won, as I was saying, a lot of awards. The funny thing is now, I think the soccer ball that's going to be used for the World Champion, the Soccer Cup today, has a radio frequency device. I don't know how much they will use it. It's still a leather ball. It still has air. But even though we didn't get this ball to happen, if we pushed something and it worked for the better of something like soccer, it's okay. But this is taking an example of industrial design and asking, can it do more than just be a soccer ball? These are some suitcases that we also designed. Just looking around in an airport, can I have a suitcase that packs my things but also opens and works as a trolley? If I have more single parents in airports, how am I reacting to that? But this is just an example to say design is everywhere, no? You can have a teenager who's lazy enough to walk and he just strolls on his suitcase, or somebody sitting down in the long hours of wait on airports. But so today we don't care if it's industrial design, if it's policy design, if it's architectural design. We care about design. We think that design has positive effect and a positive impact. So in this age of flux that will be defined more by fluidity than by any new settled paradigm, if there is one consistent pattern, is that there is no pattern. We have to stop looking for these formulas, no? Somebody came up with a formula. Yeah, let's everybody repeat that formula. It doesn't work like that. But we have to be able to adapt to things that can happen. This is some of the work in our office. This is Jerry Salinas, my business partner in Mexico, who's been with us for almost 4 years. And I just want to say that we have to find ways to let it out. Let all this information out. Believe me, it's better to live in places with certain amount of chaos that are always challenging us and making us be more creative than in countries where everything works incredible, where you wouldn't have any place to interact. Thank you very much. We can have some questions, no? I'm not very fluent in Russian, but...
Hello, thank you for the lecture. That's very pleasant and interesting. And my question is, you built and designed very modern and new and maybe beautiful design, okay? You have perfect projects, but why are we still building like 100 years ago? For example, you use grasshopper pattern, but we're still building like in the past.
But I would.
What do you think? What's the future for building?
I think that technologies are tools only. We have to understand that technology is not the savior. Sometimes we say, oh, I bought the software. It's going to do magic. If you don't know how to build, how can it do magic? If I understand technology, and if I understand the craft, and I understand how things work, I can have the best match. Because what you're looking for is a good match. So
important is the result, not how we achieve it, but the result what we have. Doesn't matter how we build it or how we make it, in what it's good.
Let me try to explain it through my experience. When I was growing up in Mexico, I questioned why I was born in Mexico. I said, oh, why? You know, I should have been born somewhere else where there's great technology. Everybody always wants the other things that we don't have. But when I started growing up, I started really, really treasuring what I had back home. Because I had an understanding of the people. I knew how to communicate. I knew that if I took 5 minutes to sit down with the guy bending the wires or putting bricks, if I would spend just 5 minutes, he would really change his attitude towards the work. He would say, the architect is sitting down here, and he would do much better work than anybody that I have, any society that I have worked with. I worked in different countries, and they don't care if the architect is there or not. They just care about when they're going to come in and go out. No? So you have to understand what are the things that you can benefit from where you are, and understand not only where you are, because also coming with fresh eyes to different countries, it's important to see the craft. It's important to see what's the correct balance between the industry and people that are being passed on through generations, that are woodworkers, steel workers, that they do beautiful stonework. Because if they don't have work, maybe when you want to do something made of stone, there is nobody to do it. And you're going to have a plastic stone imitation of what you used to do that was putting stones. So I think it's a really important balance. What do we want? As I was explaining with the CNC guy, you know, I mean, we could have had a CNC laser cutting machine. And he said, no, it's going to cost me more money. It's going to maybe take the same amount of time. I have my guys that are trained to do that. And I took the client to the company. I said, come and look, this is what I want. Even though we could have this other technology, I love working the craft like that. So it's not a matter of it's new or old, or I think it's what is the best result again. We have to understand what are the right decisions. No?
I agree.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hello. I just want to ask you a question. Hello. When did you understand that design has more wild functions than just beauty building? That you must create spaces. When did you understand it?
When
after maybe something happens and you understand, yes.
By opening your eyes and looking around. When somebody says, let's do a shopping center here, and you come a year later and nobody wants to have a store here, and it failed. So when you start understanding that the big plans of the regulations of cities, the big plans of the private investors, they always come up like, I always make a little bit of fun with the clients, not in a bad way, but I always say that they come in like the movie where they say, we're going to rule the world, no? Like, I have a plan. So we sit down and, okay, what's your plan? Well, yeah, this has been done 20,000 times, and but societies are evolving much faster than cities and buildings. Cities and buildings are the spectators of life. So if we don't understand how life is evolving and the fastness or the rapidness, buildings are not going to adapt to the way we're changing. We're changing really, really fast. That's why I talk about adaptability. No?
So you want to say that you never build simple buildings?
No, no. I've done, and of course I've done. The restaurant is just a restaurant, but we've done a residential building that is just a residential building. But now in my own process as an architect, there has to be more. It cannot be just that, because then I think we're not doing our job. We have a responsibility also, and our responsibility is to understand that the client is also responsible.
Just last question.
Yeah.
And how many people do you have in your team?
We have we never grow bigger than 25. We're a 25 people office. That to me is really big. No, architects and a couple of industrial designers. But every time we have a project, we bring in an anthropologist, we bring in a financial guy, we sometimes bring in lawyers. We didn't work with lawyers before, but now we think it's very important because a lawyer knows how to even challenge a zoning or saying something important about the regulations of cities. And I would never think it was having a lawyer next to me in a creative decision, in a think tank. I said, nah, that's crazy, no? He comes in after when we have the design. And no, they've come up with really good ideas. Because if you prove that by having also flexibility in zonings and streets and the way cities are being built, of course it is more, it needs to be more organic. So we customize teams for up to maybe 120 people, but we invite them. So it's not only our office, which is also very good for architects, not to listen to your own voice all the time.
Thank you.
One more? Okay.
Hello.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for the lecture. You told us that you're always interested in technology used in your buildings, and I wonder what, in your opinion, what place takes crafts in architect's life? I mean, what craft today means for an architect, because comparing to past, today architect is more connected with software technologies than with crafts. Thanks.
Thank you. It's a little bit as we were talking, no? What type of craft do you want, no? And that's what I was saying, that if it's like having a really powerful machine that if you don't know what you're going to use it for, why have a powerful machine? If I understand that I can have a 3D model, send it to a factory someplace that I haven't been there, and they produce the whole fabrication process and send it back to Mexico, that is surprising. But again, putting that project in particular, the stainless steel building, everything came, the problem was to really check the construction of the building, because the whole skin of the outside was being fabricated. So when it had to be shipped to Mexico, if something went wrong, it would not match. It would be a disaster, no? So we were really neurotic on site, checking everything. But the cost of that company to fabricate and to install was crazy. It was not possible to happen. We were able to hire the company to fabricate because of the crisis. They wanted to enter the Latin American market. And this is also something that I say it's important to understand what is happening, because we understood a situation that we can hire an American company to work in Mexico because of the crisis. But the company couldn't pay them to install. So we hired a Mexican company that was really good in steel. Of course, the Americans were like, oh, the Mexicans are not going to do a good job. I said, no, give them a chance. No, let's see if it works. By the end of the project, now they're a team. Anything that happens in Latin America, they work together because it's cheaper for them to have the Mexican company installing their panels. The craft, you have to understand craft. That's a given. If you don't understand craft as an architect, you cannot make the right decisions. It's not that I can have a building and say, well, it can be clay or concrete or maybe steel or maybe, I mean, if I want it in concrete, I need to understand how concrete works. And I need to understand how to make the best of pouring concrete in place and exploring with technologies, maybe the frameworks to have a different type of concrete or whatever I want to explore. But the same with steel or the same with brick. And I think I get tired of having a conversation that, what is the materials of architecture? It can be anything. What informs the form of a building? What is the content that will make the building become what it is? And what does it want to express?
Aristotle divides craft and technology, and I wonder if craft is a source of inspiration for architects. Craft not like technology.
It goes both ways. I mean, she was asking about craft and technology, no? If it's divided or what inform. I mean, if I understand the craft, I can use my powerful computer and I can parametricize the brains out of a certain thing if I want to. If I don't know what I'm going to build it with, how am I going to use that machine? There's a lot of companies now that they work they're outsourced companies that you hire them when architects don't know what how to solve certain things. So if you want to do a glass building, they come in and they talk about the glass and the properties of the glass and the types of glass, because nowadays also you have so many materials that if you talk about glass, somebody will say, yeah, what glass? I mean, this glass or all these glasses, no? But I think we have to try to work the best of everything. If you don't have the craft, there is no computer, there is no, you're going to have buildings, lifeless buildings. There's a lot of buildings that you see that are great, but there's something missing. There was no craft. They can be very beautiful. But I love the idea that when you touch something and there's certain imperfections that make it real. I'm glad to have these guys in Mexico banging steel on facades of buildings. And when I show these projects to colleagues in some other countries, they laugh. Like, oh, you guys are almost prehistoric, no? We don't have people banging on facades. We have companies that just come in and they ensemble it and everything. I say, well, we have differences, and that's good. No? So it depends on where you want to take it. I know people that are only about craft. They don't care about technology. They don't care about computers. And I know people that they don't care about craft. But I think it's your decisions when you're designing, no? It's what I was saying, what stimulates us? What really makes you understand that you're doing the right project? What is the right answer? It's working, it's working.
Okay, I have a question. I could ask about your projects, what you're going to do next, but I would like to know that any professionals have their dreams. What is your dream? Is it such a social project, or maybe it's a house or private restaurant or something like that? So what is your dream like a professional architect?
The dream, I think, is always knowing that you could make a small difference, no? That something you did make a difference. And that's why I question today, was the difference done by a building, or was the difference done by a negotiation with government and private investors and the public and community impact? And I mean, what really makes those changes? To speak of a specific project, I've always been interested in how we die, no? So all these houses for elder people that I think also should be rethought and in question of why are we isolated from communities? Why are we taking away? I mean, there's a lot of things that to me, I always make fun of myself now that I have my daughter. I have a 9-year-old daughter. And when she's on this stage that she asks everything, no, like why this, why that, why that, I said that I never grew out of that stage, no, because I keep on asking, why can't this change? Why can't we have better things happening to us? And not only as an architect, I think this is what I always say, it's out of intuition. When you walk down the street and you're hijacked by the cars, and you have to walk all the way to the other side of the street to cross all the way to the other side of the street and then go under the street to get, you question, why can't that change? Why, I mean, that's design. It's not a building, but you can design something that will make a difference of that specific thing. The waterfronts, the parks, the buildings. But yeah, basically anything that will change a little bit, that pushes us forward. Thank you.
Михель, спасибо за лекцию. У меня такой вопрос. Прослушав вашу лекцию, и те проблемы, которые вы ставите, Я заметил, что очень много схожего в отношениях между заказчиком и архитектором у вас в Мексике и у нас в России. Наше бюро довольно много работало с государственными заказчиками, и проблемы, в общем-то, вполне идентичны. В связи с этим такой вопрос возникает. Есть ли разница между проектированием в США и Мексике, и что может измениться в Мексике, особенно там у государственного заказчика, да, чтобы это стало лучше и результативнее, на ваш взгляд? Спасибо.
Thanks for the question. I think the first thing that can change is making politicians understand that it's not about their political times, because to most people in government and in politics, it's about their term in politics, and it's not about the country. No? So I think if there's a learning process, it's the buildings stay in the cities. No matter what political party, no matter what politician, the buildings stay in cities. No? The design solutions stay in cities. So I think that it's important to learn that they have to be, at least in Mexico, we would need to implement policies that would transcend political times, that they would not be fixed to a political party or to a certain political agenda. So I think it has to do with these decisions that could make the relationship better. We could also improve in having more competitions. There aren't as many competitions in Mexico as they should be, in open competitions, not only to certain selected architects. There should be more talk about social housing. There should be talk about public spaces. And I think now the government has a lab for city thinking, which I think is interesting, that a government in a certain point thinks it's important to have a think tank and to have a lab where they can invite people to talk about, they invited mayors from different cities, they invite thinkers from different cities. And I think that starts making a little bit of a difference. A difference between the states, of course, when we haven't built anything in the United States yet, but every time we've worked projects, they have different laws and different regulations that you have to understand. And there, at least, if they tell you that a permit is a certain amount of time, it is that time. In Mexico, when you want a permit for a building, you don't know how long it's going to take. No? And once you learn that process, the next time you do a building, you say, oh, now I understood how. And no, you didn't understand how. It's like doing it again. A bit like you're saying, we're similar in different things. What I can tell you as a benefit of coming from places that we have certain chaos is that you're always balancing. Otherwise, you're not static. You're trained from very little to understand how to navigate. If we understand that creatively, we can have a better output. We can have better solutions because we know how to navigate that way. When this last economical crisis happened, a lot of people were looking to Latin American countries, saying, well, let's look at countries that have always been in crisis. Let's see how they've reacted, no? Because they've always been in crisis. So if we learn a little bit of how they react, and if you see some of the city planning in New York, for instance, before decisions from the government in New York, they would pass through a committee and they would take really long. And now they do guerrilla implementations where they just go out, paint sidewalks and see what happens. And say, okay, works. And the next day they're building the bicycle lanes and they're putting the plants. Look at the streets. There's some interesting images in Google Maps where you could see how the streets were and how they transformed in a very rapid way. So I think it's, when we share these type of conversations, we learn. When you listen to other architects and see how they interact in their countries with their problems, with their interesting things and not so interesting things, again, it's how can we push things forward? But what I have clearly now in my mind is that we are responsible. We can't keep on blaming the governments. We can't keep on blaming oh, we always get really bad clients. That's why we do really bad architecture, no? So it's about how do you work with them? How do you collaborate? How do you make them understand that it's a teamwork, no? And of course, I don't want to sound extremely optimistic, no? There's some incredible downsides. I mean, the National Film Institute, we've been getting terrible press because it's an unfinished project. It rained and water went in one of the theaters and they were, oh, the architects. Well, it's not finished. It's not even finished the construction process. But we're there. And every time I go there and I see people in the garden kissing and watching or not watching movies, it's very, I feel really good about it, even though if it's not finished. But I think it's understanding how the practice is changing. Do we just want to design? Or do we push a little harder and network a little bit more and tie things together, no? I'll show. Any other question?
I think I do agree with this, and right now we're facing kind of transformation within architect job, you know, like which offer a strategy, not just a design. And my question is that, like in Mexico, considering the context, economical, political, or architectural community, does it follow, for instance, like what you offer to your clients, or architecture which is on the border with urbanism, right? Or it's just you're pioneering this, because I don't know, for instance, like in Europe, it's starting to be already a very common process, and very often what is offered by, for instance, another TV and other guys, big guys, you know. Well, I'm looking forward for your opinion.
It's something that it's not very common. There's still a lot of architects that think that it's the responsibility of the client to come with the program and say, that's what you need to work on. And they keep quiet, they grab the program, they well behave, they do a great building, they come back and they give that to a client. I'm not saying that we all should do the same thing. To me, it's not satisfying anymore to grab the program and to answer the program when I know that the program is not right. That I know the program is an Excel sheet by a client who worked with maybe a guy who misinformed him or maybe informed him and told him what the market needs. But when I go walk down the street, I don't see what the market needs. I see society evolving in different ways, and it's not something that the market can tell me, or it's not something that an Excel sheet can come up. So even when I'm a regular professor, visiting professor in different schools, even when I'm teaching students and I tell them, design is not only about the building, they look at me with a face like, what are you talking about? Because we've been taught that design is when you can knock on it, no? And it's, okay, that's design. Yeah, but if I question why should I sit down or how I sit down or what, maybe when I fold this and take it somewhere else, it works as a different thing. It's doing more things than what it should. So I believe questioning is good. It doesn't mean you're getting paid for it, because sometimes we work a lot on the strategies to get a building at the end, and sometimes the building never happens. But now we're getting clients to pay the strategy and make them understand that pay to design what is needed to be designed. And it's not that you're going to come up with the perfect amount of apartments again. You're going to open up the options to have a better building. So there are people understanding that. There are other architects that they have different paths. I think it's great that we have differences, and not all of us are in the same agenda. But even we just had our book out, our first book from our office, and we didn't want to do a retrospective book. It's a book about these subjects. It's 3 conversations with Aravena, Biarque, and Paul Nakazawa, and it's questioning the practice. I could have had a book with great pictures and just sit down and say, oh, we have a really good book now. But it's a book that questions more than answers. It's a book that tries to understand why are we living on the same time in the same world? And how are we reacting differently? And what can we share and learn? That's my basic. If I'm not, I prefer to think that we're constructing ourselves every single day rather than our buildings, no? You're constructing yourself. How? What are those decisions? No? Thank you. Okay.
Вопрос. Вы рассказываете про проблемы в современной архитектуре в новом контексте. У нас есть в нашем городе, в России, есть такая проблема разговора с заказчиком о исторической застройке. Меня понимаете? Случалось ли в вашей практике, когда есть такая еще моральная проблема, здание, возможно, функционально устарело, но оно несет какую-то историю за собой, смысловую нагрузку. И нужно как-то разговаривать с заказчиком о том, что либо все-таки менять функцию, да, то есть ставить в приоритет новые потребности общества, или все-таки сохранять нашу историю, которая для нас все-таки важна. Вот ваше мнение, были ли у вас случаи, когда был такой конфликт интересный?
Yes, very important question. Every time I think that, of course, we need history. If we wipe away our history, I mean, what is the conversation? No? How can we build future if we don't have past? No, but I think there's great examples of that, where you have really historical buildings with slight interventions and understanding. But I think the moral question is, what do you do when a client wants to put a shitty program inside a great building? You say, so maybe it's not about the building and what you can design. So again, it may be that the program is not the right program for that building. And the moral thing to do is to tell the client to either sell the building or get another building to do what he wants to do. Because if you see what he wants to do with the building, if you don't agree, why do it? And I used to be a musician in my past. I played the drums in a band, and I always thought that if I would get to a place where I needed to design something that I did not like, I would have preferred to go back to playing the drums, to earn money, to do what I really wanted to do. Because the moment you take a shitty job, people are going to ask for shitty jobs. And they're going to come to you because you said yes to some guy, but it was not the morally correct thing to do. So it's not, of course, if we don't understand history, that's something that it's not questionable, no? The question is, what are we doing with these buildings? If the height is not good for residential and he just wants to squeeze in residential, why, no? Or they want to do a shopping center in a great historical building. Say, come on. What happens to our markets, no? The street markets. What happened to the street vending? What happened to the community? What happens to all these things that we're missing and we need to bring back? No? So you will get more respect if you have a position and an opinion, rather than just bringing jobs that will pay the bills. Teach or do something else that will get you something, the economics to do what you really want to do. I think that's important, no? But when everybody opens up their office and says, I don't care what I get, I'll just do it because I need to pay the electricity. And I know it's not an easy, even though I was a musician, it was not easy telling some clients that I didn't want to do what they wanted to do. But at the end, I got more respect, for sure. No? But thank you.
Мы, молодые архитекторы, приходим сюда, чтобы послушать архитекторов постарше. Куда приходите вы?
Who do I listen to? No, it's funny, but even though I have a lot of colleagues that I enjoy being friends with, it's very rare that we talk about architecture. I try to listen. I listen to my daughter, for instance. The way kids see things, it's amazing, no? And I don't know why we managed to take the magic out of them, but when they ask things, you turn around and say, well, this is not such a crazy idea, no? But I think the basic thing is what I was trying to say. Sometimes we talk too much. Sometimes we listen too much to ourselves, and we don't listen to other people. And other people that don't know anything about the profession, don't know anything about many things, but they have an appreciation for things that that have a slight difference that you pay attention to, and you build ideas. So it's not that you just sit down and meditate and ideas start happening. It's the conversations. It's a conversation drinking a beer. It's a conversation with your girlfriend. It's a conversation with somebody that's a tourist and comes for the first time to your country and says, why are you guys doing this like this? That's interesting to hear. But at some point I got tired of thinking that it was my ideas and my thinking and my. No? That you stop for a while and say, well, I want to share conversations. Creativity is about bouncing ideas. What if you do this? Well, maybe not this, but what do we, oh yeah. So you construct ideas of thinking. And for you, students or young architects, really important and powerful ideas are not when you get to do a building. Powerful ideas is when you have a powerful idea. It can be, as I was explaining, it could be changing one simple street. And maybe that street makes a difference to create a different zoning for different buildings. And it starts implementing things that I didn't understand when I was a student. I said, no, when am I going to get my big building? No? When am I going to get a client that gives me a house? And there's incredible design everywhere. Have an opinion. Have conversations and discuss and dialogue. And talk about all these great things that could happen. Not only because we're architects or urban planners or big thinkers, no? Even at the beginning when we were sitting down with politicians, that we say, politicians, no? What are they going to know about the cities, no? I mean, but then you sit down and even some of them, by experiencing different things, have ideas, no? But if you always try to tell them, you don't know anything, no? We're the designers. But I would say listen less to yourself and listen more to others, no? And tend to collaborate more. It's always been a collaborative profession. Even though most architects don't talk too much about it, some of us do, it's always been a collaborative process. And you learn from whatever from the different things you're willing to learn from. But sometimes we don't hear because we talk too much. Right? That's why I say. No? But okay.
Мы наверняка не единственная публика, перед кем вы выступаете. И вам задают очень много вопросов в разных странах, наверное. Какой самый интересный вопрос вам задали за вашу карьеру, я не знаю? Самый запоминающийся вопрос.
That is a difficult question. Nah. No, I think the best question is if I felt coherent of what I was doing in my work than who I am. No, somebody said, because we spend a lot of time trying to create this character, saying, well, I want to be this architect, no? And I want to be this thinker, and I want to be this parent, and I want to be this friend, and I want to be this husband. And you spend so much time trying to build this person, and you're not you. So the most incredible people that I've met are the most coherent on the way they think and the way they are. It's not a show. They don't put up this tent or something to create an image of an architect. They're real, And real people have real intentions and real solutions, and we have to learn to be a bit more coherent. What you do is a reflection of who you are. It always is. So when somebody asked me if I felt coherent what I was doing, I said yes, but I hadn't thought of it. Because maybe it has to do with my Russian background, Hungarian, Polish, Mexican now, hybrid thing, that the way I was brought up, no? But I think it's important to make peace also with who we are. How do you see your life? Because the way you think, the way you were brought up to be, is the way you will do your work. Nothing different. Because you can force yourself to do something very, very different than who you are. But you will notice it, no? I can come up here and show you beautiful projects, and, oh, no? And then you might think, this is the wrong guy speaking about those projects, no? So I think that was a good question, because it made me understand that I feel comfortable questioning my clients and sharing this responsibility, because this is the way I see things. I'm always curious on who makes the decisions. Who are the game changers in the world? Who are the people that provide these or incite these ideas to keep on evolving, no? And work on them and work on them. But that was a good question I think I was asked. That stayed with me, but good question also.
Какой рынок или какие государства будут в ближайшие 5-10 лет перспективны для архитектурного развития? Не такого тупого архитектурного развития, где просто ставятся стекляшки, давайте сделаем то, что... Я быстро говорю, да? А вот те идеи, которые принимаются... Okay. Я просто беспокоюсь за вас.
No? Sorry. Okay.
Те идеи, которые принимаются, и когда инвестору интересно поучаствовать действительно в интересных, классных проектах, потому что все, что мы сегодня видели, это было круто. Я думаю, что все с этим согласятся. И второй вопрос заключается в следующем. Когда к нам приходит инвестор в нашу компанию, он всегда говорит так. Значит, ребята, я хочу, чтобы это стоило недорого, в его понимании, чтобы это было очень дешево, чтобы это было очень быстро, специфика российского клиента. И хочу вот такую штуку, как Москва-Сити. Я отношусь к таким зданиям, я считаю, что это взгляд на Америку, который, ну, я не считаю, что вот тем ребятам, которые здесь собрались, нужно сосредотачивать свой взгляд на таких вещах. Потому что то, что я видел здесь, это классно. Как затаскивать в игру архитектуры самого инвестора?
Thanks. That was fast speaking. You speak faster than I do. I think that in a time of such speed of cities and the way we live, we really have to come back to say, what do we want? I've had the luck, at least in Mexico, to run into people that have made a lot of money, and now it's not that they're tired of making money, but they want to make a difference because they've been doing cheap buildings, and then they say, well, they're still unsatisfied because they made money, but they don't have anything to leave as a legacy. They don't have anything that they're proud of, and that's the reality. So the first question to clients is that, what do you want out of the building? What do you want out of the equation? Is it money? Then, I don't know, do something else that will get you more money than just a building, no? But if it's creating a company that has a name, a reputation, that is well known because it's respected for what it's doing, that's very different, because you can make a lot of money and you can be respectful, or you can just make money, no? So what type of company do you want to be? Or what type of company do we want to work with, no? Every client, not only here, they want it fast, cheap, but they want it to look like it cost a fortune, no? Like it cost millions. So there's always a negotiation. How can you have the correct building, which takes the right amount of time with the right budget, where you, at the long term, if you see it in an equation, if you do the right thing, you'll make more money out of making a respectful career of great buildings than doing incredibly cheap ones that they will know you for the cheap guy who's doing the cheap buildings that don't do any good for the city. And that's what's happening in at least in places like Mexico, where out of all these, everybody became a developer. A lot of the companies that were textile companies, there were different companies, everybody went into real estate. Everybody was doing buildings. So imagine the competition of so many people doing fast food buildings, no, as I would call them, no, because they were like fast food chains, no? Like you stop in, you rent it, and then you know it's a shitty place, you sell it, but somebody else will buy it, no? So the question is that. Every time I sit down with a client, I tell him, what do you really want? Don't tell me how much money you want to make. Tell me what do you really want. And if it's just the money, I know I will have a hard time, because there has to be something else. There has to be additional will of something, because when you see your kids growing up in the cities, you do want better cities. You want better places for things to happen. I mean, a bit idealistic, but I believe it does make a difference when you start working with the right people. And there's a lot of people that want to do interesting things that of course are a business, but they talk to the community and they talk about what cities can experiment and express and make, no? We're in constant experimentation, no? And then somebody says, oh, well, we did this wrong, let's do it again. Let's create a new highway, a new freeway, a new park, a new building. But I think I always say it's like finding your partner, no? It's the right match. When you're somebody that doesn't feel right, you can't even hug, no? But a bit like that, no? I think it's, you know it immediately, no? Out of intuition. But